Hey, I'm excited you're here. And if you've been listening to kind of what we were talking about over here with Joe, right,
Hmm.
about this autopilot system, what are your thoughts? I'm curious to what are you thinking about that?
Well, I think only having heard a part of it, I would probably say I would have to hear some more. The main thing for job seekers is one, can they control their job search and their results? And of course, you would want to still use complementary uh, strategies. I think along with anything that you use that's automated, if you decide to go that route, I can't say it's bad because there's going to be people that are going to say that everything works. There are people who say that objective statement has worked great for the job search. We know that many times an objective portion of a resume is kind of old guard and old school and is kind of obsolete for most people. But there are people who find jobs with it. So I can't say, and I'm not going to bash anything. I don't know enough and have a lot of experience, but I would say that for every time you apply to a job, you should try to get in contact with a human who can also refer you on the back
Okay.
end. And
Aha!
Okay.
the reason that I think it even works out, even though you might be insured to interview, is that if you dig deeper, if you go to the from the referrer to the person he may know that can introduce you to the next person, that introduce you to the next person, let's say five people deep, and they're each introducing you, that's possibly 15 more people you can use to within the company to get to know. So
So
the statistics show that not only referrals increase your chances of getting interviewed and getting hired, but the more people you know within the company, the more likely you'll be successful in the company and down the line. And you would have an already set network in that job should you get that job.
yeah, so
You
networking, yes, networking. We totally. I mean, it's the Who You Know job networking show. So I'm totally in alliance with what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Um, Now, what I think is if you combine the two, right? Now we got a superpower. Here's my thought. Here's my thought. Less time applying, more time networking. Less time applying because it's going to shotgun or machine gun, right? Your application. More time networking. So to me, it's I always look at things as ROI. Where am I going to get the most return? And if I'm just data input, data input, data input, data input, that's not a good ROI, right? In my eyes, this thing is doing the data input for you on autopilot. So, anyways, I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were. Let's talk about some
Sure.
of those strategies that you do, right? Because you're being featured all over the place, man.
Voice of the job seekers.
So I love that. What are some of your, do you have like a go-to strategy that has like really been kind of a home run for you?
Well, I think in the past couple of years, I've talked more about job search being a lifestyle rather
Hmm.
than an event,
Okay.
rather than just being a seasonal thing that you do, because most behavioral people is that they only look for jobs when they need a job.
Ah, okay.
And these
Yes.
days, with the things where they are and things shifting like that, if you're just looking when you need it, you're really behind
Behind. Yep.
months and months.
Yep.
So if you're already, job search is a lifestyle, you're already, and that doesn't mean you're perusing job boards all the time. I don't mean that kind of lifestyle. I mean for the fact that you're learning, that you're developing, that you're building your network, you're connecting, you're giving, and giving is a strategy, is not and I'm
Amen.
not
Mm.
talking about giving, I'm not talking about giving, just to get, but you're going to probably give 10 times as much as that you're probably to get back if you're doing it right. And we can argue whether that's 5 or 10 times, but we will
I'm
say
with you.
that honestly, that there is a very deep ROI with that, because when you're giving to other people, you're not just a person you give, but person that you're the people who are watching you give are
Yeah.
also being impacted in that. thanks very much for joining me on The Voice of Job Seekers. If you want to know more about me, Mark Anthony Dyson, you can go to thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Go to the right where there's a speak pipe button, and you can press that and leave me a message of some type, or you can just say hi and tell me what you like or what you don't like about the show. I don't mind. And then, too, if you want to just get in touch with me or send me a suggestion or a message, then you can text me at 708-365-9822, or you can email me at mark@thevoiceofjobseekers.com. What you just heard was a show that I was on in July. It was called Who You Know. It's a Who You Know job networking, show. And they have a big presence on YouTube and LinkedIn, of course, and have a large following. I was grateful to be on that show, and thanks to the co-hosts of Trevor Houston, Foster Williams, and Mark Elder for hosting me on that show. We had a great discussion, and you can see the whole thing on YouTube, and I've linked to the whole show. In the last 15 minutes, I was a part of the show. So if you want to skip that part, you can. Today's featured interview is Mark Babbitt, or Mark S. Babbitt. He and Chris Edmonds wrote a book called Good Comes First, Challenging the Current Corporate Culture. And it's going to be a great book. I'm looking forward to reading it myself. I haven't read it yet. But it was a great interview. And as always, if you've been following me for a while, Mark has been a guest here multiple times over the years. So I want to bring him back on to help him promote his book, and I think it's definitely worth promoting. Job Seeker Nation is a show that I do a live stream in which I do that with Jack Kelly every week. And this particular episode that I'm going to feature a clip of coming up, and I think that's going to be the last part of the show, we got a chance to talk with Nickquolette Barrett about what surprised you about workers and employers since the pandemic. How did they do? How did people pivot? That was a question that we asked, and you want to see our responses, or you want to hear our responses, you're more than welcome to. It's going to surprise you. Or maybe not, I don't know. But in the meantime, I wanted just to thank you. If you guys are looking forward to the next show, I'm going to go ahead and post one next week as well with Beverly Jones. I've been on her show, Jazz About Work, 3 times. And she has a new book called Find Work Happy, or Find Happy at Work, rather. Definitely want you to see what that's all about. And I think these days the theme that everybody wants is they want to be happy, and they want to work at somewhere where it complements their skills and their strength, but also that the culture is amicable. So I think that would be a great time for you guys get to know her and get to know her work, get to know her podcasts, and I'll link to all that in show notes coming up next week. In the meantime, hey, enjoy the show. I hope that you guys will find some great value out of it. And if you have any questions, you hit me up. In the meantime, peace in the Valley of Love. I thank you very much for being with me all this time. And if you're new, feel free to subscribe to the show. In the meantime, thank you and have a great week. Next on the show is my man, Mark Babbitt. We are longtime friends, at least more than a decade at this particular point, right? We've worked together multiple times. So if we have a very intimate discussion, you guys don't know what we're talking about, is because we have a lot of history between us, between talking about our families and what's going on in our lives professionally, what's going on in the job search. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing very well. Let's hope that Well, let's be intimate, but let's also be relevant. How does that sound?
Yeah, well, we don't have to talk like it's 2011. Indeed, it's now 2021. The
There you go.
the job search has changed even from 2 years ago, which I think the theme of what we're talking about here is your book is Good Comes First, going to be released here in another few weeks. I believe you're closer to the October time, right? As opposed
Yes.
to the
Yes.
1st of September. So we have a
Yeah.
little time to put that. It'll be out that first week in October on podcast, but people will have access right now. And we are streaming, in case you're wondering what I'm doing, streaming to LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And later on, it would be up on my YouTube channel. I've written for you back on several occasions, and Mark has been on my podcast several occasions, and we worked in many other different settings as well. But all in all, this is the second book that you've worked on, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was a book in between there somewhere I feel like I'm missing, but I think those are the two. There's two that are on the market right now where you were really involved. When I first saw the title, I was not surprised that that was you, because I think that has been,
Well,
if there's been a subtitle to everything that you've talked about, this is it. Good Comes First.
well, first of all, thank you. That's a huge compliment. Mark, you said that the job search has changed in the last 2 years, maybe even 2 months, let alone, 10, 12 years since you and I've been hanging out talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll
Right.
tell you what hasn't changed. Company cultures haven't changed. And I, this book came about because me and my co-author became more and more frustrated that we were sending people out into the job market only to have them become disappointed and frustrated, and they just couldn't find the right culture for them. And so we took our experience and said, what if we built company cultures based on the doing of good, and not just for your shareholders, but your employees and your candidates and your interns, and of course your customers and other stakeholders. And that's what brought us to Good Comes First. Is we, especially as we climb out of this newest wave of the pandemic, we want leaders to look at their cultures now and say, what can I do better? But even more important, perhaps, we want job seekers and candidates to look at their careers and say, why would I go to work for a company? I know I got to pay the bills, but why would I go to work for a company that I know sucks? I can see on Glassdoor they suck. I can see in the media they suck. I don't like the way they treat their customers and their employees on social media. But boy, I need to pay bills. Well, let me just take a step back and see, do I have any runway there? Can I really afford to hold out for a culture that actually fits me, my personality, my dreams, my goals, my values? And so that's why we wrote Good Comes First.
Yeah. I think as well is that there's also an underlining. I mean, I talk about strategies all the time, but good is a strategy, but also happiness is a strategy as well. Is that people now underline, yeah, they want good jobs, but I think ultimately people want to be happy in a good job. And they want to be happy with somebody that's considering the best treatment of them first, not the one that's going to be the net that they, when they fall, that there's going to be this net waiting for them, and that's going to be the good. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be that that's going to be first rather than that being last.
Well, Mark, you've been talking about this since I've known you, 2009, and happiness is a strategy. Good is a strategy. And I'll tell you, you see what's happening now. Your last guest touched on it. People are leaving good jobs because they're not good for them. They're not good for their souls. They're not good for their values.
Right.
they're being asked to tell mistruths or to to fudge reports or to union shops being asked to actually slow down their production. No, we're doing too much, right? Well, you can't go home at the end of the day thinking about that stuff and feeling good. You can't go home and feel happy about that. And that's what we're trying to change. And what we say in the book over and over again is we want to build a world where there's good people doing good work for a good company to work for. And that's our goal. Is we want happiness, we want good to become a strategy.
Yeah, there's an anomaly in a good job because it pays, and a company that's not good because the way they treat is the thing that needs to be eliminated from our vocabulary and our mindset as well. That we have to, stick it out and survive, and like our fathers and grandfathers did.
Well, there's a big part of it, right? This whole generational precedent that feels like an anvil falling on our head. There's almost a guilt that comes with well, my father was never happy at work. He just paid the bills. My mom, she just did what she had to do to get by. We aren't supposed to enjoy work. My grandfather sure didn't enjoy work. Well, you know what? Times are different now. The world is different now, and people, like I said, they're voting with their feet. You look at some of these old school leaders that are insisting that their employees, after being given all this freedom and all this autonomy to work from home, to make their own decisions, to set their own hours, and now these old school leaders are mandating that we're going to come back in the office and it's going to go back to the way it used to be. It's going to go back to normal. Well, the old normal for 90% of the population sucked. There was nothing rewarding about it except the paycheck. And now, from Wall Street to Pennsylvania Avenue to Silicon Valley, all these leaders are sticking their necks out and saying, no, none of that matters. The last 18 months doesn't matter. The Delta variant doesn't matter. It's time to get back to work. Either get back to work or resign. And people are resigning, moving on in record numbers. We've never seen a migration of talented workers like we're witnessing right now. They're saying, no, I'm not going to work like that anymore. I liked being home for my kids. I liked being home for my mom or my dad and providing elderly care. I like being home for my dog or my cat, right? I liked having more balance, and I'm not going to go back to the way it was. I'm not comfortable with that at all. I'm not going to spend 3 hours on a train just to work 7.5 hours, and I'm supposed to be happy about that. No, I'm not going to do that. And a good thing for employers, because there's a whole bunch of really talented people on the market right now that weren't just a couple months ago, before the JP Morgans and those kind of companies said, fine, you're either going to come back to work or you don't have a job.
Yeah. Well, I think when people dig deep, it's interesting that the intelligence that you can get these days right now on LinkedIn and Glassdoor and all those, to find out what the company MO and why a whole bunch of good people left. And when people see that people like them are leaving, that's a red flag automatically. So at what point to leave, so they can contact the person and ask that question now. We're not 6 degrees of separation anymore. We're maybe 1 or 2 ties that we may be connected. So really the questions that job seekers can ask now is, how's this company? And please tell me the truth. And then we can look at the company and see where the red flags are ultimately when we dig a little deeper. So, you can't hide pebbles where they're supposed to be gold.
That's right. Well, I remember one of our first conversations, Mark, you and I talked about the best question a job seeker can ask in a job interview.
Yes, we did that probably the last time we spoke.
And the answer to one of our main topics was, ask why is this job open? And people still don't do that very often, unfortunately. But
right.
And sometimes we talk about this, you don't get an honest answer. You don't get a direct answer. you sure don't get the answer you want to hear. But if the interviewer hears that question and hems and haws and tries to find just the right words to explain what's going on, you don't even have to hear the answer now, because you know they don't want to tell you the truth, right? So on the other hand, let's just say it is on surface an unpleasant answer, and somebody says, "Look, we just had a very talented young lady leave this position because she wanted to work from home, and we're shifting back into our old normal, and that didn't appeal to her. That's why this job's open." Well, you just got a really good answer, and now you can judge. Well, wait, I was going to ask later in the interview if I could work from home, and now I just got the answer to that. So now I'm much more informed than I would have been otherwise, right? So even if you don't get the answer you want to hear to the "why is this job open" question, then it informs every decision you need to make from this moment on, and it puts you as the interviewee in just a powerful position.
Sure. And a good answer is an honest answer isn't always going to be the one that you want to hear. And in fact, sometimes it's even better to say, well, they told me the truth about it. And I've heard from other people that this is true, but they seemed, that informs my next question and say, well, is this going to be permanent, or are you going to be open to having people work from home, or at least a hybrid? What does the future look like? And we don't have to accept every single answer as the single only answer. We can ask other questions that will mitigate what we really need to hear and what we ultimately want to hear. And that may lend to being a good culture because you've been honest, not just giving a standard line.
Well, and expectations have been set now, right? You know exactly where you stand, and you're making the decisions based on the facts, not what it says on their About Us page or the careers page or in the job description. You're making life altering decisions based on real data, and you can't ask for anything more than that.
Right. So what are some of the other subplots that may be relevant in this time that we can expect from the book?
One of the things that we do, and we realize it's risky, given that I am, and so is my co-author, an old white guy, is we call today's business leaders out on the carpet, and we say they are afflicted with boomer male syndrome, and that they're leading how they led in 1979. And the world isn't like that anymore. Diversity matters, inclusion matters, equity matters, pay equity matters. Different colors and genders in the boardroom matters. And we can't build a good comes first culture without that. So fundamentally, foundationally, we challenge today's business leaders to look around them and to say, am I surrounded by other old white guys? Am I afflicted with boomer male syndrome or BMS? Am I part of the problem? I mean, leaders, you've been in this business a long time. Leaders think they're the answer. Well, what if the leaders are the problem? And our contention in the book is that those suffering from BMS are just a distinct part of the problem. And we know it's going to ruffle some feathers, but we're never going to get to the building, the co-creation of good cultures if we don't come out and talk about the stuff that matters. And diversity matters, equity matters, inclusion matters, and so we start the book that way, and we hope we do make people feel uncomfortable, because that's going to help us start some tough but meaningful conversations.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is underestimated in being an older Black guy, having lived that life for all of my life, is many times that people don't realize the ghosts that are in the past of those folks, because that's what they automatically go to when they're hedging and they're being hesitant, is that they would have to confront those ghosts from the past, and those ghosts come in many different forms, even of parents and grandparents. That is something something against the values that they were taught. So therefore, instead of telling you that, they're going to say no. We can't do this right now, or we need more data, or we need more time,
We
or
need
we
more
need more
reports. We
people,
need
or we need
consultants.
more people to agree with us. We need, we need the same, our competitors to do the same before us, before we start to do it. And it's like, so much for being business and being a leader. In that respect, because sometimes, as a leader, you do the things that are uncomfortable because you're asking people to do the uncomfortable every day.
Well, I'll tell you, in research for the book, we took a poll, and it wasn't a scientific poll. It less than a couple hundred people. So, take that for what it's worth. But we asked people to self-identify based on race and gender. And I will tell you that when we asked the question, does my company act with integrity? About 44% of the white people said yes. And about 74% of the leaders said yes. The numbers were half of that for non-white people, and half that for females. And so not only are we not taking on those ghosts, not only are we leaving the past unresolved, we're hiding from the present. We don't want to face reality. I mean, and the data shows that. It's like, the other funny thing is, we knew that going into the question, if we asked 20 people for their definition of integrity within the corporate environment, we'd get 19 different answers. And that's within the book. That's why we're asking people, leaders, to not only take a look within, but then to start actually defining what their values are, and not just saying, oh, well, one of our values is integrity. Well, what does that mean? Because if we're getting 19 different answers to the define integrity question, probably pretty important to define what that means within these walls, right? So,
right.
So we don't want leaders to throw another poster on the wall saying, well, here's our mission and here's our values. We want them to live those values. We want them to define them and then align their company to them. And only then can we really get to the bigger issues, that are not just plaguing the world of work, but society in general. Only then can we really put good first. And so that's our goal.
Yeah, because there's unresolved issues in the past, many of them only resort to one thing, and that's to force the past on the present. It is similar to putting new wine in old wineskins, so to speak. It is going to have a disastrous, and it has been disastrous for those companies. And just like my last guest had talked about, is that if you're still asking for data, the conversation's already over. Because
Right.
I think we have the data, we have the eye test. There's enough pigeons carrying messages stating that this way of doing business is not only not profitable, but there's no way to reconcile the relationships that have been burnt because of it. Only but to say that, hey, it's just time to start something new and start doing something that's really going to cost you something, because that's whenever big companies or companies in period, they don't want to apply something, they want to throw money at it and think that that's going to resolve it. And that's, unfortunately, that doesn't work. We know that doesn't work with the homeless, right? I gave at the office, but right in front of you is the person suffering, and that doesn't solve anything.
Well, not only, Mark, do we want to throw money at the problem, and by the way, HR's been guilty of this for decades, right? We don't actually fix our diversity problem. We just start yet another program that's going to take on the issue, right? It doesn't do anything, but it makes us look good, right? And so we invest in this program. We don't just invest money, though. We invest our influence. When a CEO gets up in front of the company and declares from his soapbox that from now on diversity matters, but then the next day something that shows that that's not really true happens, then that big speech is now just a podium of lies. It didn't help us get to the truth, right? It was passionate, it's powerful, maybe influential, but it's only influential until the next instance of something bad happening is tolerated. And you know, the other part of that true can be true also, Mark. If we say, if that CEO gets up and says zero tolerance policy starting right now, right? And how many times have we heard that speech? The next morning, somebody displays a behavior that is counter to the speech that was given yesterday. Well, if that person has walked out the door right now, like, no, we just said yesterday that we were not tolerating disrespectful behavior of any kind in this company. You've been warned by HR 4 times already. You heard the speech yesterday. This is your last day. This is your last minute at this company. And they're walked out. Now people, from the most veteran employees to the newest intern, now they look at that and go, wow, that was powerful. Words are powerful, but the action that I just witnessed or heard about, that's culture changing. And that's the kind of change that's sustainable. That's the kind of change that's real. It isn't just, you know, the proverbial lip service. It's no, he meant it. She meant it. We're changing starting right now.
And that's what I mean by, and that example is perfect. What I mean by, it's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you maybe people who you consider that were good workers who do bad things and say bad things to people. And you're risking that. It's really not a risk. It's really leverage in the long term, because you can get somebody who will actually do good and come in to replace that person. But ultimately, people, they don't, because they get sentimental and they think, well, he really didn't mean it, and they didn't mean it, we didn't mean it. And you know, we can name up plenty of companies that do that on a regular basis, even from the out on a larger scale, in excusing behavior that's contrary to what they're supposed to be standing for. And unfortunately, they let their guards down and let things go.
Well, that's where the lack of accountability kills us, Mark. And if you say something but then don't back it up, you're not holding yourself accountable. Right. If a leader says something and then you get that, oh, he didn't mean it, right? He didn't mean to touch her. He didn't mean to make her feel uncomfortable. That's just the way he is. You know, he's a physical guy, right? Then and you're just enabling, you're tolerating that behavior that makes people feel uncomfortable. And in the process, you're not building a great culture, you're actually tearing it down. If one of our values is psychological safety, right? We want people to know they are safe here, physically and emotionally. We want this to be a safe place to talk and to work and to function and to grow. And then you have somebody that's not enabling that value, not demonstrating the behaviors that would show us that value is important to him or to her. And it's reported, and then nothing happens about that. Well, now you're tolerating those behaviors. You're setting a standard, you're setting a precedent that says, well, we say we care about that, but clearly we don't, right?
And even if you take a long extended time to do it, what does that say to your people that you've taken to? Yeah, you've lost
too
them.
Too late. You know, it used to be, my dad, you and I have talked about this, Mark. My dad ran lumber mills in small towns in Oregon when I was a kid, and we moved 14 different times before I even went to high school. And one of the things I learned from him just is he would take action like right now. If somebody was being disrespecting another employee, disrespecting based on rank, disrespecting the company, that person was walked out the door right now. And somehow we got away from that. Somehow now we got to send them to HR. Well, there goes 6 more months of tolerating that behavior while we retrain it.
Mhm.
Yes, there are examples where we want to mentor somebody. We want to redirect behaviors, right? But that has to happen in a week, not a year. That has to
Right.
happen in 6 days, not 6 months. And you're absolutely right. By not taking action, we're showing that at least for now, for the foreseeable future, that person, we're not going to hold him accountable. We're not going to make her responsible for the words she used at that meeting. We're going to let her say, well, I was just having a bad day. I'm not really like that. Well,
Mhm.
you've not really been like that like 12 times in the last 2 months. So maybe you are really like that, and maybe we need to find a different culture for you. And
Yeah.
these are the kind of things that as you said, the carrier pigeons are just strutting all around us. The signals are all around us. The messages
Yeah.
circle us, and
Mhm.
we're just not paying attention to it. And by the way, it's not just the leaders; it's also candidates. How many times have we seen it? Here comes the job offer, and boy, I really got to pay my bills, or I really want to get my own place again, and it's been a long time since I got, since COVID hit, and I lost my job, and we see those shiny pennies, but we don't stare at those carrier pigeons looking right up at us like going, "Don't do
Yeah.
this, don't
Yeah.
do it." We're not aware enough of the impact of a bad company culture has on us psychologically. It can tear us down, and there's literally millions of stories of people that were very good at what they do, and at one time really liked the company they're working for, but it's only been 3 years now, and they can't
Mhm.
wait to leave. They can't wait to leave,
Yeah.
right? And now
Right.
the pandemic has given them the excuse they need, right? Now,
Sure.
now and that's why we have this max exodus of employees, and that's why so many jobs are open right now.
Right, right. They're not just looking at what employers have said, they're looking at what they have done. And the history tells everything that they need to know, and it's informative enough for them to make a decision that I'd rather wait and stretch out my budget than to be miserable for a long time to come. So people make that. The book is Good Comes First. We're looking at late September, early October release. Mark, any other parting words you have before we wrap it up?
I'm going to say the same thing your last guest said, which I thought was prophetic. Just keep doing what you're doing. And since you and I started down this path, there's
Mm-hmm.
been literally thousands of people that have just come and gone that haven't been there for people who need the help you give. So I want to thank you for being there, and I want to implore you just to keep it up.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it coming from you. That is an honor and a privilege. And I think the rest of you are going to sign off. Peace in the Valley of Love. Get the book. Good Comes First. So thank you, Babbitt. Follow him on LinkedIn and Twitter and wherever else you can. And also visit his platforms, Uturn and Work IQ. Thank you very much. You all have a good day. And Mark, thank you. Workers and employers, what has surprised you about both? Start with you, Nickquolette, since you're the girl of the group.
Their tenacity. I think that has surprised me. And the fact that they are tapping into their talent to create side businesses
Mm-hmm.
and think about what they really want in their career for their dream career. So that has been surprising because, you think about it, you're on the hamster wheel all day long. You really don't have time to develop, to think about what you really want to do. But this extra time being without traveling within a vehicle or what have you has given you an opportunity to think about, what are my options? What else can I be doing? Have I thought about what I want?
Mm-hmm.
And that has been surprising to me and also very welcoming. Of course, it's great for business, but it's
Right.
also really, really good to see people owning their talents and skills and not feeling that they have to be stuck in an actual job. Unfortunately, what's surprising for me with employers is how slowly they're catching up with the great resignation because they're not willing to develop a strategy and pivot to make sure that they're retaining their employees. And maybe they're in the wrong job, but allowing them to seek out other opportunities within the organization, because I'm always pushing for people to stay within the organization to see what they can do first before they leave, because I want to make sure that they exhaust their opportunities. And if they're not pivoting and doing a different strategy, then they're losing those employers. And we just got to get out of this old stinking thinking and really kind of pivot with the times to do what's needed. So yeah, you're probably going to have to go back to the drawing board and actually work.
Yeah, yeah, and coming to the 21st century.
Thank you. Because, a lot of times, sorry, but a lot of the people up at top are still old school. They started their careers back in the 70s or 80s, and they're at the top, and they just feel you have to be in a suit and tie and hose, stockings for women, and go into an actual office and sit all day long and order lunch. No, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, my wife does a business thing, and there's this thing where they want timesheets faxed to them, and then
What's faxes anymore, really, right?
At the end of the month, never mind what was about, but at the end of the month, they want the timesheets physically mailed to them.
Oh my God!
That
how out of date, right?
That is so dated.
I'd be
so dated.
1999 with that, but yes, it is true.
I'm gonna get on my stagecoach. And
And that goes to the point that they did not have a conversation with the people who do the job, the people who are on the ground floor, because that's one of the things that is one of my pet peeves. Nobody talks to the people who do the job. They make the decision in the office, and you don't know what the heck the people do down on below. Talk to them, and you'll probably get better decisions made to advance the organization than you've ever thought imaginable.
Yeah, I just can't imagine. Jack, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll echo what Nickquolette was saying about companies. There's some great companies, wonderful people, some wonderful management, wonderful executives, but a lot of companies still don't get that the tides have shifted. It's a different, it's a different world. It's a different mindset. People are thinking differently about their careers. They want to pivot to new things. They want to reinvent themselves. They want to start businesses. They want flexible hours. They don't want to work 9 to 5 and it's stuck in a little cubicle under fluorescent lights all day long. And it's bizarre because a lot of companies just don't get it. I can't tell you how many times, I hear from job seekers where, nope, they won't let me work hybrid. I have to be in the office, or I have to do. It's like, that's not what's going on now. I mean, there are companies who are taking care of it, but there's some who just didn't get it. They're not changing. They're being resistant to change. And I think, Nickquolette, it's probably what you're saying. You have these, and I don't want to disparage any generation, but you have these boomers. And if you do something, we're all creatures of habit. If you do something for 30, 40 years, it's hard to change. Even if it's a year and a half, it's still hard to change when you've been,
for sure,
putting on your suit, going into the office, doing that for 40 years. It's really hard. So I get it, but they have to change. I thought more people would just say, okay, the world changed. I got to change. It's just like fashion, right? Like how many times do you have clothes, that you wear, especially guys do this. We'll wear the same thing forever until someone says, Jack, you gotta lose that tie. You gotta lose it. And you go, okay, all right, I got it. I got to change. But companies, a lot of them they're not doing it.
Yeah.
And they need to hire consultants to come in and talk to them about that, and also talk to their people. I think that's the easiest thing to do is just talk to your people and take the time to do that and do something with that information, and don't just do it as a check off, but actually listen to actually help those individuals see that you're going to make an effort to change.
Right? Makes this makes so much sense. Like if you do that to one of your employees, right? And they're going to be happy. Like, okay, she cares about me. She wants me to be happy. She wants me to work hard. So then I think most people, not everybody, but I think the vast majority of people, if you treat them nicely and you're encouraging them, they're going to rise to the occasion and then some. And they're going to probably be more productive because wow, Nickquolette is so awesome, so nice. She cares. She's compassionate. She's motivated. I want to make her proud. You know what I mean? It's like a human instinct to do that. But
Right.
Yeah,
conversely,
and I've
if
had
you
an employee tell
right,
me that. An
yeah,
employee told me that. He said, I'm going to do everything I can to make you look good because I love that you support not only
yeah,
me, but our team. He said,
yeah,
you ain't got to ask me to do anything. I'm going to make sure you look good so you can get recognized as
yeah,
well. And because it's all about that, I call myself a servant leader. So if you're
yeah,
serving them and undergirding what they're doing, they will in turn serve you back. And organizations need to take on that mentality as well. It's nothing to do with religion. It's just about servitude. How do
yeah.
you serve your employees so that they can serve you back? And that's by taking care of them holistically, mental,
Yeah.
financially, benefits, time off, all of those things. Serve them and they will serve you back.
You know what, Nicolette, it's so interesting you say that. Give you an example just yesterday. So, and I don't think I'm talking out of school by saying this. So,
Mhm.
I was interviewing the head of talent at Gemini, the big cryptocurrency exchange. Really nice guy, very young guy, made me feel super old because I could probably be his dad. So, that's the only thing I didn't like about him, that just made me feel super old. But aside from that, but he said something really interesting. He said something that, oh, yeah, because I was asking what kind of people would go. Do you have to be into cryptocurrency? Do you have to be a Bitcoin and so forth? And he's just people motivated, want to work, who so forth. And then he said, and yeah, someone be here 2 or 3 years, and they might move on. And I'm like, wait, dude, I'm writing an article. Is that what you? Is that? He goes, and then he looked at me like I'm an idiot. And because you say, hey, I get, people come here, we want them to stay, but we get and respect them. That if they learn and they love what they do and they want to stay, great. But if they learn, and we're an entrepreneurial company ourselves, we're always coming up with new things. We've spawned a lot of entrepreneurs who started business. God bless, do it. And that struck me as like, that as a Gen X, I'm so not used to that. You know how I was saying like the boomers are, they wear the suits. I think we all have that. So in my mind, it was hard for me to process how open-minded they would be to say, hey, instead of getting angry at a person, I trained you and now 2 years you're leaving. They're
Yeah.
like, well, no, God bless, go. You know what I mean?
They're
Right.
treating their career as a
Right?
business. They are the
Yeah,
CEO of their career,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
actually make more money when they move than they do taking the
yeah,
1.5% raise on a yearly basis,
yeah,
when they could
Yeah.
get 10% increase in their salary if they take their talents to the next player.
And that's why the demonization of workers and employers is one of the things that surprises me about the employee employer relationship, that how broken and fractured it is. I mean, think
Yeah.
of this. We don't even have to go that far in time memory banks to kind of remember how fractured it is. For years, companies would tell people were asked, well, I like to work from home. They said, well, that's not possible. Then the
Yeah.
pandemic, what did we
yeah,
all do? We all work
Send
from
them
home.
all
yeah, yeah,
And really
quickly.
that is, and what we learn about employers, that and here comes my Sinead O'Connor moment, that they're liars.
mm,
They can do what they want to do, however they want to do it, if they want
and
to
they get
do it.
mad because they get mad because the employer has torn up the photo of the company's
yeah,
building, because it is one of those things where you tell something, you only believe it because it's true, because you don't have any choice, you don't have any evidence, although your friend is working at home, and the other places that you have now gone remote, and here you are going, well, I thought you said. And I mean, there could have been a lot of problems that could have been solved in the transition if they even made it hybrid before the pandemic. As
Mhm.
far as we know, there could have been aliens looking for bodies to snatch, and here we are going on the train or to the bus, going to the workplace. I mean, I'm
yeah,
using a little levity here, but I think
yeah,
that's one of the things that
yeah,
companies didn't consider in the macro part of it. What I'm surprised is well, for job seekers, is although resilient, they're still resistant to be flexible in understanding how much it takes to job search.
yeah. That's a good point.
And
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
and I go back to something I've been saying for the past couple of
yeah,
years, and Lord knows it rings in Jack's ears all the time.
yeah,
Job search is a lifestyle now.
yeah,
It is part
Mhm.
of your
Yeah.
life. It is not something
Mhm.
you can just put aside anymore,
Nope.
like a winter coat.
Say
You say,
that.
"Oh, well, it's summer now. I can shove this away." No, you
Mhm.
got to be ready to wear it when it turns cold, and it
yeah,
can turn cold at any point. So therefore, I really believe that job seekers still kind of hold on, is because they hold on things from the past, the demonization of job hopping, the demon or switching jobs when they feel or they want to change a job because they want more money instead of waiting for the 1.52% raise.
Yeah.
And all of that, it is just shocking how fractured it really is.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, if it was down to marriage and you told me we couldn't do one thing and then we end up doing it anyway and it was that easy, there would be some trust issues on both sides. Or they'd always existed, it just got exacerbated by the